Yeah. So the first thing we're gonna start. Hi, Eddie. How are you? Eddie just came in from Singapore, so let's give him a hand. What time is it for you?
Yeah, good question. I think it's nighttime, but I'm not sure.
It's nighttime? Okay. So how about we kick things off, but please, if you guys, we're going to show a clip from next week's episode, but we can't film it. So
Put all the
you guys can
cameras
put your
down.
phones down.
All the cameras down.
Please. Thank you. Right? You guys want to see a clip from episode 209? All right. Put them down. I feel like Al Pacino, Dog Day Afternoon. Put them down. All right, here we go. Here's a clip from episode 209.
Why did he stop? Let's keep going.
So weird to show that out of context.
You know, it's great to be here with Ben. This show is it's truly incredible and amazing, and I can't wait for every episode. Even though I have access to all of them, I tend to wait.
Do you?
On purpose till they come out because of it. I just love the storytelling. There's so much behind it. And it's been, I think, a long time since we've seen a show like this where it's captured so many people's imagination and the culture. And the audience, and this reminds me of shows back in the days when television, you tune in on a particular night and everybody was so excited all week to get to the next episode. And that's what this is like. I mean, what is it that you think about this show that's caused this incredible cultural zeitgeist?
I wish I knew, because then you do that every time you do anything. I mean, I think it was Dan Erickson wrote this pilot script about, I guess, 9 or 10 years ago that had such an interesting concept to it that I think was so relatable and so interesting to contemplate, the idea of, of cutting off one part of your life. I think it came out of the fact that he worked in a job that he really disliked in a door factory, and he was thinking about how can he just skip past his 8 or 10 hours a day of being there. And I think that concept really resonates with people who are having to spend their lives doing things to make a living, and parts of your life that you just don't want to deal with. The other part of it, I think, is that there's a huge metaphor in there in terms of just the questions of like what's going on at this company, and what are we doing? What are we doing when we go to work? What are we doing with our lives? For me, it really resonated in terms of the workplace comedy. It almost felt to me like The Office or Parks and Rec, but then had this weird sort of Twilight Zone element to it. And the idea of like, what if you worked at an office where there was just sort of this day-to-day office banter, but you didn't know who you were, what you were doing, or why you were doing it, which is kind of like life, I think, and really when you get down to it. So I think that sort of people picked up on that. And it's been an interesting build too. You talk about this like week to week that the show is on. But also, this show has had a chance to build over the last, 3 years? We had a long time in between seasons, which wasn't intentional. But I think the first season was during COVID. We were shooting in the heart of the COVID period, which was already felt very sort of disconnected and kind of dystopian in its own way. We'd have to test every day, and people were in hazmat suits, directing actors with face masks on and PPE. And so it all kind of, I think, fed into the timing, even though he had written it way before, this kind of idea of severing from people and connecting with people, and our human connections. And I think ultimately that's what the show's about. And it's been fun to watch how the audiences have gone beyond just the concept, I think, of the show, which is that thing I was just talking about, but also it really then becomes about the relationships and the emotional stories that people are connecting with, and they get emotionally invested with the characters. And I'm sure, as you know, I think any good storytelling is always going to come down to the emotional connection, I think, with the characters in this story. So yeah.
One of the best ways you can see this is people can't get enough. And
Yeah.
one of the ways you see that is it's on podcast, YouTube channels, you name it, Reddit. There's just people talking about the show
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah, no, it's really incredible because, as you know, and also in this day and age, it's so hard to have something that that breaks through and that you can actually get people to watch and to see, because there's so much. I mean, our generation, we're about the same age. It was different. You go to the movies. The movies were the thing when we were kids, and television was television. But there wasn't all this other stuff out there, and I'm sure I'm curious how you deal with that as someone who is running Apple TV and music, and I mean there are all these different elements that are grabbing people's attention, and how to actually get a conglomerate of people who actually are paying attention to the thing you're making, because there's so many good things out there. It's just hard to get people's attention.
Yeah, it's you're competing with everything. Because there's so many things that's available to you. We're starting to show our age by talking about it that way, but yeah, there's, whether it's all of the online pieces, all the media that's available to you, you just have access to everything 24/7 wherever you are. But the online piece is fun because it's, even I watch one of the YouTube channels after the episodes, and they go through like just intricate detail of trying to see what the story's about. Do you sever yourself away from those? Or have you ever looked at those and come up with any other ideas or any crazy theories that you've seen there?
Yeah, it's very, it's dangerous to go there, I think, because there are so many ideas. It's kind of crazy. I mean, I've checked in on some of the podcasts, and I usually listen to them until they say anything that's critical of one of the episodes, and then I stop listening to them, and never listen to them again. No, but it's interesting. Like, people have so many opinions. I mean, even like this week's episode is very controversial for people. Like, they have deep feelings about it, and we tried to put as much detail as possible into the show when we were making it the first season, but never even knowing the first season that who would be watching it. So you just kind of make it for yourself, and we were in a bubble pretty much. I think we were lucky in that when we started out, you guys gave us a lot of creative freedom and have always, I think, given us that. It's funny because people talk about, oh wow, Apple's a huge corporation and Lumen's a huge corporation, and and I always felt like, yeah, this is actually the perfect show to be on Apple, because there's something in the aesthetic, there's something in the ideas of what's going on, but I've never once ever gotten any like note or anything from Apple about anything we do, and I feel like that's kind of, there's an intrigue about Apple. By the way, how is Apple doing? Because sometimes I worry. Are you guys doing okay?
It's a competitive world, which is great, but we're doing all right. We're
okay.
We're like you, trying to be our best and create new things that people really love to use and
good.
Watch.
Because sometimes when we, if we go over budget a little, they'll say to me like, "Come on, guys," and then I start to worry for you guys.
I appreciate that.
Okay. But it's good. You guys are in the black.
We're so far so good.
Okay, cool.
If you keep doing this as well as you're doing, I think we're going to be okay.
Yeah.
So, you mentioned this show and season 1, and as you're watching season 2, the complexity and the details and how immersive the universe of this whole thing is. And you go back and you're watching something in episode 7 and it showed up in season 1, episode 2 as a small thing. I mean, how do you do that? Like,
yeah, it's. I mean, look, we have an amazing group of people that are working on the show, starting with Dan Erickson, who created the show. Our writing team that's evolved over the last few years are just incredibly attentive to those details. But we also like any show. I mean, I remember listening to Vince Gilligan talk about working on Breaking Bad, and saying that there was like never any crumb that they didn't use somehow that was established in the storytelling. And I think we have a totally different process than that, but I think all of these little details, seeing how people have picked up on them, and we were attentive to them in the first season, but the second season, it was really trusting the audience and knowing, wow, the audience is really going to find these things. And they found things that are, things that we didn't even put there, that they go, oh wait, oh my God, look at this. Look at the number on the library rack behind Gemma and this. It's exactly the number of, times that Mark walked in and out of his front door before he was reintegrating. And I'm like, yeah.
That's it.
Exactly. Nice. But then there are things that you put in intentionally that you think no, maybe nobody's going to pick up on. I think though, what we tried to do, it's an imperfect process, and I would be lying if I said we had it all figured out internally. We know where we're going with the show, but I think the creative process on this show, it's very important to pick up in where you're making any show. You have to pick up on what's resonating and sort of build off of that in terms of relationships on the show. Or I just, I would call out like our last episode, episode 7, which people are flipping out for, was directed by Jessica Lee Gagne, who is our cinematographer. Yeah. So brilliant episode. And Jessica's been working on the show from the beginning. We did a limited series before for Showtime, which is this other thing I'll tell you about. They show stuff on TV, but it's not Apple TV Plus. And they're not. I don't know what's going on with Showtime. Do they exist anymore?
They do. They're part of Paramount Plus now. So.
Okay. Apple TV Plus. Yeah. No, but so she's been with the show from the beginning, and the depth of the work that she put in, and Mark Friedman, who wrote that with her, and Dan Erickson, and what we wanted to have there was the depth of this relationship with Gemma that was very important to this, the whole overall story, and that was an important thing that we felt like we had to do. While there was lots of details and little, Easter eggs and things like that in there, but really it's the emotional core that I feel, people always come back to with the show.
Yeah, at the end, and you're right, I think the thing that makes this show really work is that you care deeply about the characters, you're emotionally invested, you are on the edge of your seat at the same time. It has all of those components so that it's personal.
Yeah, it's definitely personal, and I think the work situation is something that so many people can relate to. I wonder if you worked on the severed floor, like if you were one of the characters in the show, which character who do you relate to the most?
Good one. I'd probably do Irving. I love the fact that Irving's all in on whatever it is.
Right.
And I'm kind of like that. So yeah. I like that perspective of it. And
well, Irving's like very loyal to in the first season, he's very loyal to the company, the ideology of the company, and then he sort of starts to question the reality and like what's really going on at Lumen. Do you ever do that?
Yeah, no, I do. I've only been at Apple 36 years, so But I've never wanted to burn it to the ground like he did. But
right. Well, that's good. That's good.
No, that's really good.
Yeah. Well, I know that. I mean, I did see that Tim Cook got severed. So he did. He did. And he did that. I mean, that was actually shot. That piece was shot in the actual Apple hall. Tim Cook did a piece where he went down the elevator and got severed.
Well, it was funny. It was filmed in the Steve Jobs Theater on the Apple campus, and the back of the Steve Jobs Theater is all white, kind of like the Severance. And I remember when the show came on, we were walking there once. I'm like, oh, we're inside the Severance, walking through the thing, and so we thought it'd be a perfect place to film it. It was like you stole it from us.
Yeah, we did. We stole it from you. Yeah, we sent corporate spies in.
I want to see another clip because,
yes.
I mean...
Okay, good. Yeah, okay, good. This is, again, an out-of-context clip from next week's episode.
This Friday, we get
to
see the rest.
It's cool also, I mean, that, what's been exciting, too, is to see that people have embraced the the tone and the pacing of the show? Because that's not like a some car chase happening. But I feel like the in this day and age right now, everybody's attention spans are getting so much shorter. I mean, you guys must be. I'm just curious. When you're overseeing all these creative endeavors at Apple, how do you think about what you're making? And could you talk a little bit about the overall, how do you do what you do? Because you're overseeing a lot, and it's a world where it's really hard to get people's attention. How do you approach that?
Well, I think there's some similarities, a lot of what you said, which is in order to innovate, you can't be the same as everything else. And so one of the things that we try to do is to try to think sort of around the corner and take chances. And the way we're able to do that well is by having great people around us, right? The fact that we've been able to work with you here, but the people I get to work with, the team that we have in TV Plus, you find the best people in the world to work with because they have incredible ideas and they're able to. And then you give them an environment to go execute, make it easy to get rid of the problems when they come in and help out. And what I found is if you put a lot of focus on doing a few things, not very many, but a few things, and doing them really, really well, you can succeed in the way that we like. And so that's why we don't make a lot of products. We don't make a lot of TV shows because we don't know how to do that in quantity and try to be the best. And so that's what I loved about working with you and your team. You're trying to be the best.
Yeah. I mean, but that model is challenging to scale up, right? I mean, because you kind of started out saying we're not going to be, we're not going to be what Netflix is doing, where there's so much programming there. You had to start in a very specific and focused way.
Yeah, but if you look, I mean, you can't. What do you describe this show as? You wouldn't describe it to somebody as a particular genre. Or a particular, right? That's the beauty. When you do something that's great, it should resonate with a lot of people and hopefully everyone. And so when we think about our shows and we think about our products, we're not designing them for a small subset of people. We design them for everyone. We realize we may not get everyone to watch or everyone to use our products, but we think of them in that way. But again, if you focus on doing a few things, you might get something right. And I think that the show has done that in spades. I mean, it's been a long time since I've seen a show capture the imagination. I was in Singapore last week, and when I was talking to people that knew I was involved with TV Plus, this is like the first thing that comes up, and so it's a global thing because it's gotten people's heart.
Well, and I feel like you do that with all the shows that you have on the service. They're all.
Try.
I mean, I think they're all really specific and high quality, and you support the creative, people who are making the shows. Like I said, I've always felt totally creatively supported, and I'm just curious though. Do you have in your mind, and coming back to this question I was asking, like in your mind when you see, okay, say we're going to start small, and then we're going to build it out, because it's hard to scale it out and keep the quality, isn't it?
Well, it's impossible, actually. You can't be, at least we can't be. Maybe somebody else can do it. We can't be great and do a ton of things. I think if you're trying to do something that's great, you just can't do a lot of them. And so part of what we've said is we're betting everything on the shows that we're doing, because we're not going to throw 20 shows up against the wall and hope that one sticks. Right. The ones that we do, they all need to stick. Otherwise, we have nothing else. And I think that pressure is a good thing, because it makes you be better. And so there is nothing else. It's not like, oh, don't worry about this. I got this other thing.
Right. Well, it comes down to those choices, though, what you were saying earlier, like what you're going to spend your time on. And I'd imagine when you're running a big company that you have to make those choices. The choices become very important of what you're going to go with.
Yeah, no, look, if you're not doing 100 things, then every choice should be and is critical around it. And so, you've got 10 episodes that you're doing. There's not 100 episodes. You think about in the past, you'd be doing, 26 episodes in a season, right? We'd be 52 episodes in.
Yep.
So now every decision that you make is that much more critical. You can't fix it like in the next thing. And
Yeah, no.
it's the same thing with our products and the things that we do.
Right. So once you commit to a new product, you're going to roll it out. It's going to be years, and you have to just go with it, right?
Yeah. No. Yeah.
That's what I think about a lot with the show, because people start to talk about it and go, well, I hope they do this next week or that. It's like, well, we did it all. It was finished last year, and you kind of have to trust your instinct, I guess, and that's kind of the creative process, right?
That is the creative part. You have to believe in what you're doing, and hopefully people will see it and they'll feel it. Now, you have this unique position that you've been in front of the camera and behind the camera. When I look at Severance, one of the amazing things is you have actors that have to play two different roles and two different people at the same time. There's the innies and outies, and how hard is that, or how do they deal with that?
Yeah, I'm glad I don't have to do it, because they do it, and they're so good. We have an incredible cast: Adam Scott, Britt Lauer, Tramell Tillman, Zach Cherry, John Turturro, Chris Walken, Deachin Lockman, Jen Tullock, Michael Chernus, all these. But the actors who are playing severed characters, they're so, it comes down to that thing of making the choice of who you're going to cast. And when you talk to an actor and you get a feel from them of how they work, they're so committed to what they're doing as actors. They're so good. I think that's, I don't know who said, it's a famous quote that, directing is like 90% casting. If you get the right person for a role and an actor who really cares, these actors, after the first season, were so much more knowledgeable about their characters than Dan Erickson or I was, because they're living in them. They're thinking about every scene from their character's point of view. In this case, sometimes the two different points of view. I mean, the way Adam came in the first season, so fully committed to figuring out who innie Mark was versus outie Mark, to his voice, his physicality, what he did. He made very specific choices that and I never talked to him about, but he just came in with that. And the same thing with Britt this season, where she's playing Helena and Helly, and she's just created these two very distinct people. But yet there's also this idea that Severance is, something that doesn't necessarily cut you off from who you are, because that's the question. Like, does love transcend severance? Does emotion? Does who you are? Like, who are you? Are you your innie or your outie? And they're constantly asking themselves these questions every scene that they do, because there's always, especially look at Irving's character. He's felt this thing for Bert, and and he's trying to transcend the barrier by making this painting that he's trying to dream to himself. So there's always this question of what's coming through, and the actors have just embraced that fully. So that, to me, it's like Tramell Tillman, who plays Mr. Milchick, is the most gregarious, sweetest, fun guy to be around. But when he's on the set, he's Mr. Milchick. And it's like, the first scene we shot, we talked about this we do a Severance podcast. The first scene we shot with John Turturro, Tramell was nervous. It was, he was working with John Turturro. It was this big role, and we had a scene where they're walking down the hallway, and we had to do it 17 times because he kept screwing up the line because he's a little bit nervous. And it was like, I was like, okay, fine. This is, his first day. By the end of the season, I was afraid to talk to Tramell. Because he was so locked into that character, and he's very, very. I mean, it's been incredible to watch how these actors have embraced what they do, and I think that's the key on all fronts when it comes to our, our production design. Jeremy Hindle, our prop department, Catherine Miller, who's our head of the prop department, who went to the computer museum in Rhode Island to research 70s and 80s computers to figure out what the MDR terminals would look like. So everybody's completely invested in it. And yeah, that's the key, I think, with these actors. They make you believe it. I think you can have a silly, crazy situation. I mean, it's kind of a little bit, end of the first season, Dylan's holding these two switches that are One's down here, one's here. Right. It's like there were moments when I thought, okay, well, I hope people buy this because it's a little bit crazy. But there's no question they were going to buy it because Dylan, Zach Cherry, was so invested in that. And if you believe the reality, then the audience will believe the reality.
Well, see, it goes back to what we were just talking about before. It's always about the people. You get the best people, and when you put the best people together, they can create incredible things, and that's what your team is doing.
Yeah, and coming back to Apple, I feel like the synergy has really just been a key for the show's success, because you talk about cutting through the fact that, with our this second season, we've been off the air for 3 years, which was not anybody's intention, and it was a little bit scary for us because we didn't. I'm sure you guys were.
Well, it's scary because you have to get everybody back in the mode, right? Everybody. That season finale of season 1 was, I think, my favorite season finale ever. Yeah. And so you're just waiting, and so.
Well, that was, I think that was due to the writing, that these threads were coming together at the end of the season, that everybody was, wanting to see, how that worked out. And again, coming back to the original concept, which I think was so just, such an amazing idea that Dan came up with. But yeah, I mean,
Here's the good news. Because it took so long, people started watching the first season again when the second season. So it was by design.
Right, for sure. Well, I mean, I'm glad they did. It's definitely, though, it was a strange experience putting it out. I feel like you guys came up with some out of the box ideas to promote the show.
I wanted to talk about that because I think this is a good example of, like, again, when you get great minds thinking, how do you market a show? Obviously, you put trailers up on television or whatever, and it just felt like this show really deserves something different. And we came up with this crazy idea of putting a glass box inside of Grand Central in New York City, and we had the characters working there, and you were there. What was that like?
Yeah, it was weird. It was in a great way. I had so much fun. I wasn't doing anything, but I was just there watching it, because I knew the actors were going to embrace. First of all, the idea was a great idea to do something that would just be like almost a performance art piece, and put this cube in the middle of Grand Central Station at rush hour and put the actors in it in their cubicle, this glass cube, and you couldn't hear anything that was going on. They were just just living in there. And the original idea was pitched to us like, hey, we'll have some, cosplay actors dressed as the team. Maybe we might be great if we could get somebody to come down, maybe to visit from the cast. But then Adam Scott said, well, wait a minute, we have to go in there. We have to do this. And I think it was that willingness to get the whole cast in there that made it something very different and very special. And then I said, well, okay, if we're going to do this, you guys have to stay there at least 3 hours. Because, it has to feel like a thing that can develop and let people discover it. And then we didn't want to do any sort of announcements about it or anything. Let it be organic. And watching it happen, for me, it was just so exciting, because mainly just watching the actors go in there and fall into their characters. And, that's what actors do. We improvise and we like to, it's fun, it's playing, and they just naturally went into these, these office dynamics. And when Patricia came in, and at one point she started throwing things, and she made Mark Adam stand in the corner like baby girl or something. It was so weird, and it was I didn't know what was gonna happen. And
boy, did it work.
Yeah, and honestly, it was something that just it was just they always say you should do a viral video to promote your movie or something like that, and it's always ridiculous because nobody can just make a viral video. It has to happen. People have to make it viral. But this was one of those things that just that happened organically.
Yeah, it was magical. It really was. Now you directed an episode this season that I think was incredible and really special, because it's the first time that the innies were able to go outside. Yeah. And it was I think it took the show to a different level that we hadn't seen before. How was that when you were doing?
Well, we wanted to do, this was episode 4. We wanted to do, that was one of the original ideas for the season, was to do a corporate retreat. What would the Lumen corporate retreat be like for the innies, and the idea that Milchik was basically saying, okay, you guys, did the OTC and you went out into the world, you want to see the world, well, this is what the real world is like. And we thought, like, let's get them out in the world and kind of do this sort of, kind of strange adventure. And also, obviously, there's this big reveal that happens at the end of the episode, which I won't say if anybody hasn't seen the episode. But it was definitely an adventure for all of us. And the thing I love about the show is that it goes between different genres, like you were saying, and sometimes there's this surreal aspect to it that I think is very important in the show. There's sort of a mystical aspect to it that is questioning kind of what's the reality, what is everything about, really, as opposed in just sort of like basically in lockstep with also the office workplace stuff. So that's, to me, what's always been sort of part of what the combination of what makes the show work. And this was sort of like leaning into that. And we all went up into the Catskills for like 5 weeks and had a great time. And we had a rap party at a roller rink up there, and it was really fun.
That's awesome. I love it. Music, especially something that's near and dear to our heart, has played a big role in the show. And how do you do that? And is there any artist or anything you're like anxious to get into the show?
Yeah, well, Theodore Shapiro is our composer, and he's a guy. He's amazing. He wrote has written all the music for the show. I met him back when we did Dodgeball back in the day, and yeah, he's great. He's an amazing, talented person, and he started writing music for the show before we started shooting the first season. So I had a bunch of suites that he had written that we then played on set when we were shooting the first season to kind of just give the actors a sense of like, this is the feeling of the show. As we were figuring out the tone of the show, we kind of like figured it out all together. And that was an interesting part of the first season's process, was watching the actors do the scenes, hearing the music, and really discovering like what the feeling of the show was going to be.
I love this because it's that attention to detail that we try to do with our products. And music plays such a huge part in what you feel when you're watching those. And if those songs, if they were different songs or didn't have any music, you would feel differently about the episode.
Yeah, 100%. I think the music on the show is another character, and it's incredibly important. Music's important for me, and I think most people in terms of just your life. And over the course of making the show, I just create these playlists, and just the tone and feeling that comes out of them. Sometimes it's something we don't end up using in the show, but sometimes it's something that we do end up using for a sequence or something like that. But I think, because you basically created Apple Music, right?
Well, my team and myself did. We started with iTunes a long time ago.
Right, iTunes.
It was our love.
I've heard of iTunes.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just what is the overriding idea when you come up with something like that? Is it to make music accessible for people, to help people find what they love?
Well, at the time, everybody was digitizing their CDs or downloading songs, and we just were like we were going out and buying CDs and then ripping them and putting them back. It seems like, wow, there has to be a better way to do this than this. And so a lot of it is just to try to enrich people's lives. Sometimes to make just life more fun and easier, and sometimes is to give people tools for them to. We've given you a tool in a way by having TV Plus to go build things, and so it works on both sides of those, which is great. Now, Fanboy Eddie's going to ask you a few questions.
Okay.
So we got 2 more episodes. Any more you can tell us about the season finale, or?
No, right? I can't tell you guys anything about the season finale. What can I tell you? It's gonna the season's gonna end soon, and hopefully people will, be along for the ride. I don't know what you guys could tell from those scenes, but there's stuff that's being figured out, and things are gonna happen.
I had to ask.
I have to say though, this is the years working on this season it's really hard to keep those secrets for years. I mean, this has been like a long time. I don't know how you guys do it. We just like get stressed out and just kind of like hope that nobody will say anything. But it's really tough because like the currency of the surprise of what's going to happen is what you have.
I think what we should do to make it easier is let's not wait 3 years for the next one.
Okay, definitely, definitely. All right.
That's great. I think we want to take some questions from the audience. Right?
Great.
Otherwise, you and I will keep talking here.
Yeah.
Since, we're having fun.
Okay, good. All right. Should I read one? You want to read one?
Sure. I loved reading the Lexington Letters and the other media on Apple Books. How do you approach the world building, and why does it work so well for this show?
Yeah, the Lexington Letter is something that is on Apple Books, and also the UUR, Ricken's book is there, and these are all written by Dan Erickson, the creator of the show, and I have to say, this is like another sort of example of Lee Stone, who works at Apple, who's just like, hey, we got this idea. What if we what if we actually put out the UUR, which all makes sense, and I think this right now with social media and all the different outlets of ways that people can learn about the show and the pieces that you can give people that they can help sort of like build the world, that's amazing. That never existed even, 10 years ago. And I think people eat it up and they really want it. And the great thing is that our show has so much lore and so many different, things you can get into in terms of the history and Ricken's books and things like that, when there's a partner that you're doing the show with that wants to engage in that, and, uniquely Apple can kind of do that in many, many different ways. So that for us has been really fun and great.
That's great. I love this next question. I love that I care about the characters more than about Lumen. But what is Lumen doing?
Right. Does anybody know? Anybody have any ideas? What? Goats? By the way, does Apple have a goat department?
We do not, but I do think we're with the GOAT of 2025 today, I hear.
Oh, wow. I would say that goats, it's funny because like in the first season, I remember we had a discussion like, are we doing too much with the goats? Are there too many goats? And it's like, no, the goats are, the goats are part of the show. And the goats are great to work with. We don't, no goats are ever harmed making the show. And they're real. They're not CG goats.
Yeah, that scene was amazing too.
Yeah, the goat room.
The goat room?
Yeah.
It was so good.
That was fun because we went to a golf course in Brooklyn and built the walls around the golf course to get the hills of the goat room.
You were talking about, we've been talking.
Oh, I can ask you.
Okay, go ahead.
What other shows do you like to watch other than Severance on Apple TV+?
Oh, there's no other one. Come on now. Look, there's a great movie right now that we love, which is The Gorge.
Miles Teller.
Yeah, Miles
and
Teller's
Taylor-Joy. Yeah.
Great. It's a great story that is kind of fresh and new and really exciting to watch. I just finished watching Silo, where the team is, and it's a good example. You hear Silo, if you watch, you might think it's just sci-fi, but it's not. It's a lot more. It's all about, again, it's a lot of things, life and what it's like, and survival and emotions and caring, and those are the things we're trying to bring humanity into the storytelling that I love. And we've got a new Formula One movie coming out in June with Brad Pitt, and
nice.
That's sensational, that I'm very excited about. So we've got an incredible pipeline of stuff coming.
That's great. I'm also Slow Horses, Bad Sisters. Both great shows too. Shrinking. You guys really, and then the new one, I'm excited. I haven't seen anything on it yet, but I hear it's really good, is the Seth Rogen show, The Studio, right?
The Studio, yeah. We just showed the premiere here on Friday night.
Cool.
So hopefully some of you got to see it. It's
great.
A fun show.
Yeah, I hear it's amazing and really funny.
We'll take one last question here. and I think it moved from the question, but I like the question, so you can't read it, so I'm going to ask it.
Okay.
Somebody was asking about the casting process. We've been talking a lot about people and how important people are. What is the casting process for the show and that you did, and how do you know?
Well, it's a good, this is a good thing to talk about. Adam Scott was always in my mind to play Mark. But I talked about this on the podcast too with Adam. But at first, Zach and Jamie, who run Apple TV Plus under you, right, Zach Van Amberg, Jamie Ehrlich. I think Jamie, to me, is a genius. That's because Jamie's here and Zach isn't here, actually. No. Yeah, you're welcome, Jamie. But no, we had a different. They were like, well, we don't know if we see him as Mark. And I was like, well, I really think he's Mark. And this is just an interesting thing because people I don't think talk about this that much, but sometimes you have differences of opinion about casting. And it wasn't anything, they were big fans of Adam's. But they just saw it differently. And Apple TV was just starting out. And I said, well, all right, I don't know, we can explore some other ideas, which we did. But then ultimately I said, I really think Adam would be the guy. And they were really open to it, and then he did a reading, and they were like, yeah, he's the guy. And I think that just, to me, was sort of the beginning of this creative process that was like, okay, it's going to be a real back and forth, but also like a trusting of, who you're working with. And for me, the casting is very important, and I feel like, especially with the series, you're going to be living with these characters for years. And so you really want to feel that there's something that you connect with and that you're excited about working with them. And that's how, we cast the rest of the show, too.
Ben, this has been amazing. For me personally and for Apple, it's been an incredible honor to work with you on this. And we couldn't be prouder. As I said, I'm a huge fan. It's been amazing to see all the people out there just so excited and wanting to.
Thanks. I mean, I have to say, being here right now, I do remember when we first sold the show to Apple TV Plus, and I said, what's Apple TV Plus? Because it didn't exist yet. You guys were just starting up. And they said, we're going to go pitch it to Apple TV Plus. And it's like, oh, Apple's going to do a streaming service. And it almost didn't seem real. It was like, okay, sure, sure, we'll pitch to them. And it's become this just amazingly great creative relationship over the last, 6 or 7 years. So I appreciate it.
Well, we love working with great people. So thank you, Ben, and thank you for.
Thanks, guys.